fantasy, sci-fi, horror, dark fantasy, fan fiction, and much, much more. On today's Story and Critique Show, welcome to the Story and Critique Show, episode 23. I'm Kaufman, and this is a segment where we read stories from the writing community to help. So I do live readings and also help give them feedback. So if you want your story critiqued, send an excerpt right now to the email below at kaufman@the-creative-ghost.com. Perfect. And we're going to be getting underway. I am so excited to hop into this. But if you're watching this on the replay, don't worry, I got you covered. Whether you submitted a critique or if you're just heard a story and you're like, I absolutely love that. When the stream ends, you're going to be able to hop to the part of the video that brings you the most value. All right, perfect. And let me welcome to the stream Penelope, welcome, Eli and Mary. Glad to have all y'all here. Thanks for joining me today. And ML, welcome back. Happy Saturday. And we got some great stories set up for today. So I'm super stoked to get into it. And as always, we will be launching our critique show with our little game, the comment of the day game, my favorite. So drop those comments, whether you're dropping a critique or whether you just have something witty to say, keep them coming. At the end of the stream, I'm going to pick my favorite top 3 comments, and they're getting added to a comment of the day leaderboard that is in development on my website. So more coming soon. Definitely make sure that you drop those comments. I tend to grade the comments based on cleverness, helpfulness, and comedic value. So comedy, clever, and helpfulness to the writing community. So drop those comments. I will favorite the most interesting ones, and we'll see how that goes. Now, as we're going to hop into it, I have our first story set up. We're starting off with another fan favorite, Jezebel's Theater of Macabre Delights. Here is a little promo banner we got from it. Thought that would be super cute. So here's the promo for it. Want powers, dislike reality, not using your soul. Jezebel presents the Theater of Macabre Delights. So we're going to actually be hopping into episode 2 of this. Super excited. We are starting off with our dark fantasy, and it is going to be quite a trip. But before we get to it, once again, if you want to submit your story, this is what you got to do. Send an email to kaufman@the-creative-ghost.com with the title, genre, and pen name. Send an excerpt, and I will add it to the submissions for either today's or next weekend's stream. The details are also down in the YouTube video description down below. Each story receives 20 minutes, 10 for a reading and 10 for a critique. Sometimes I'll go a little over on the reading portion if I'm almost at the end, but I try to keep them around that 20-minute mark to be fair to everyone. And don't worry, if you've submitted your story and I'm highlighting it, that doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that it's good. It just means it's a note for me, so that way I know what I need to touch upon when I go back into the critique portion of it, because this is a live reading and I'm not perfect. Beautiful. And most importantly, join the critique. I encourage you, highly encourage you to drop a comment. If there's something that you really liked, drop a comment. The author's probably here, or they might be watching on the replay, but they will be checking out your comments. Or if there's something you're like, you know what, that didn't make sense, or something that could have been done differently, definitely give your feedback. If we're submitting our stories, then it is suggested and assumed that we want feedback on our stories. All feedback is great feedback, as long as it's delivered in a way that is kind and clear. And the great thing is, you as the author, You don't have to take all the feedback. You get to pick and choose what is right for your story, for the world, and the experience that you are delivering. And we also have to take into consideration the stories that we're reading in the stream today are all excerpts. They might be at the beginning, they might be somewhere in the middle, or they could be near the end. So we can only give our feedback for these excerpts based on what we read and the information we have available. All right, beautiful. And Jezebel's Theater of Macabre Delights presents episode 2, Are You a Human? Dark Fantasy by Penelope Hartley. And just a heads up, my friends, for those of you here used to my community, I've been doing a lot of talking lately, and I feel my voice is a little might be a little funky today. So if we might end up doing a shorter critique portion of the stream, depending on how my voice is feeling. So we'll see. I'm going to kind of play it by ear. I always want to get to everyone's stories, but you know how it goes. All right, perfect. So we're going to start right at the top of the stream. We have the Dark Fantasy with Penelope. Hey, what's up, Soul? Glad to have you here, my friend. All right, beautiful. So we got 20 minutes on the clock, and I am all set. Okay. Jezebel's Theater of Macabre Delights presents Useful Idiots, a dark modern fantasy. Episode 1, Life Isn't a Checklist recap. Tom, freshly single and unemployed, navigates the chaotic streets of downtown Chicago, reflecting on his predictable life. He is about to encounter a lonely heart's ad that will change his life forever. Episode 2, Are You a Human? Poor Tom Smith. He'd had a streak of bad luck lately. The Monday after Mandy and Starman split, his boss at Truckingham Palace had fired him. He was told it wasn't his fault. His position had simply become redundant. Could be done by computers, his boss had said. Tom glanced down at his white sneakers and wondered, am I just a tool? Just a cog in the machine? Around and around in his head, the word rang shamefully out. Redundant, redundant, redundant. Suddenly, a little green lizard streaked out from under a piece of litter and headed straight towards Tom's feet. He nearly fell over, trying to keep from smashing it into the cement. When the creature made it to the gutter, it paused to whip its head around, showing off glinting golden eyes and a fiery orange throat. It licked its eye and then cannonballed into the tunnels under the city. Despite 2.6 million Chicagoans living their lives around him, Tom felt lonely. The emptiness gnawed at him, making each step in those bright, almost white sneakers feel heavier than the last. Just a coffee, please, Tom said to the barista. 2 sugars and no cream? Yeah, that's... Oh, God. Tom suddenly realized he had ordered the same coffee with the same 2 sugars from the same cafe for the last 5 years. Only the baristas had changed. I'm predictable, he murmured. Coming right up. The barista seemed not to hear him. She flashed him a warm smile. As she prepared his drink. Her tattoos and intricate artwork of flowers and flourishes blossomed along her arms. Her hair was pulled back, but wisps of blonde hair cascaded across her cheeks and down her neck. When she handed him the hot cup, the scent of jasmine and orange blossomed around her, a warm, sensual fragrance that contrasted with the sharp, rich smell of freshly brewed coffee. Her eyes lingered on his lips for a moment, longer than necessary, sending a spark of unexpected heat through him. He took the cup. When their fingers brushed briefly, a vision flashed through his mind. He saw her face close to his. Her crimson lips pouted and puckered, almost as if she was waiting for him to. Tom gulped heavily. Thanks, he blurted out and smiled as a flush rose to his cheeks. She smiled back with wet, pink lips. What was that? Tom said to himself, but the sensual vision disappeared when he sat in a sunbeam at a small table by the window. He placed his jacket on the chair beside him and neatly opened the newspaper. Tom liked the newspaper. It presented a messy world in a series of orderly, self-contained boxes, each one explaining complex matters with an economy of language. He scrolled through the back pages, searching for job listings that might suit a meticulous and tenacious young man like himself. Positions in data entry didn't excite him. He loathed the outdoors, making the city's park department a poor fit, especially since he was allergic to cut grass. Ugh. His heart quickened at a field trip coordinator position at a nearby retirement home, but he hesitated. The elderly had nothing left to lose. They were entirely too spontaneous. Still, he circled it with a red pen he retrieved from his pocket, considering the possibility. Looking for something exciting? The barista asked, suddenly at his table. She had a knack for appearing without making a sound. Doesn't she have pretty lips? Mm. Mm. Doesn't she have pretty lips? Whispered a soft, feminine voice. Tom nearly jumped out of his chair, and the sound. Tom nearly jumped out of his chair at the sound, but when he looked around, nobody was speaking to him. The barista smiled expectantly at him, waiting for his answer. Just browsing job ads. Tom replied, a few beads of sweat appearing on his forehead as he tried to sound nonchalant. He caught the subtle hint of her perfume again. She smelled so damn good. She licked her lips at him, and he swallowed hard. Anything good? She asked, leaning slightly over to glance at the paper. The alluring scent of jasmine and orange blossom enthralled his senses. This made his pulse quicken. She's sweet on you. In his head, the woman's voice dripped with honey. Not really. A lot of mundane stuff, he said, his voice wavering, a bit huskier than he intended. He felt lightheaded. But this one looks interesting. He pointed to the ad for the field trip coordinator. She laughed softly. You don't strike me as the type to roll with Mima and Grandpops. She wants you. The voice was louder this time, like velvet, smooth, and the woman sounded experienced. This time, along with the voice, he saw a vision flash briefly in his mind of the barista's red nails biting into the flesh of his stomach while she. Tom tried desperately to ignore it. He chuckled, but it sounded more like a weird grunt. It's worth a shot, right? She'd go to bed with you. The voice taunted him. Absolutely, the barista said, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. You would? Tom was floored. She looked a little flummoxed. I mean, sure, it's good to try new things. Oh, yeah, sure. She shrugged, and sometimes the best things come from unexpected places. Tom nearly slammed his face with his palm when he realized she was talking about the newspaper and not sweaty things. I'm a Tom, by the way. The sound of his own voice surprised him. It surprised him more when he reached out his hand. Suddenly, Tom felt good about the connection forming between them. He'd always liked their brief chats, but today he felt strange. Maybe this was what being spontaneous felt like. Lila, she replied, extending her hand. He shook it and smiled happily. You don't want her. The voice sounded like the scratch of sharp claws against a chalkboard. Alarmed, Tom pulled his hand back. I better let you get back to work, he stammered. Lila smiled knowingly as the burning blush on his cheek. After she returned to the counter, Tom glanced back down at the newspaper, trying to regain his composure. Instead, his eyes fell on an ad on the opposite page. Seeker of earthly ingredients for magical concoctions. Are you a human? Do you possess a heart that beats, a mind that wonders, limbs that roam this strange land called Earth? Then I, Wizafina, a smoking hot Earth woman, require your assistance in a most peculiar ritual. Ingredients needed. 1, human heart, preferably warm and brimming with life. 2, eyes, capable of seeing miracles. 1, brain, filled with thoughts, dreams, and sundry biochemicals. 2 hands for crafting spells and creating wonders. Additional notes. I am a being of magic, not love, and my intentions are strictly alchemical. Your presence will contribute to the most powerful potion this world has ever seen. Fear not, for your sacrifice will be honored in the annals of magical history. Did I say sacrifice? I meant magical mating ritual. Should you find this proposition intriguing, inscribe your name on a piece of parchment and cast it into the wind. The earthly spirits at my command will guide you to me. Remember, this is not a quest for the faint-hearted, only strong-hearted, sharp-brained men with 2 functioning eyes and hands. I mean, the spontaneous and adventurous need apply. Yours in magical endeavors, Josephina. Woo, man. All right. And that is the end of the excerpt. Wonderful. Let's give it a quick round of applause. Woo, woo. So, Penelope, once again, another really, really intriguing piece. The things that I absolutely adore about it, once again, your description. You have a very unique and also straightforward sense describing the world and the character's actions in a way that feels like it's your style and your style alone. It's fun, and then layering that in to this type of setting, which is a Tales of the Crypt type vibe, as we had chatted about last week, is very, very fun. It's this story, even more so, makes me feel like I'm in an episode of The Twilight Zone. That's exactly how it feels like this story, simply because it's much more, it takes place as much more, feels like I'm more present day. It feels a little less fantastical until you're kind of getting that like mind, the talking voice in the head, and then you get the ad at the end. So it's really interesting. I absolutely love it. I think what works well is that Tom is a very neutral character, and he's very intentionally supposed to be a very neutral, maybe borderline boring type character. You can tell he's designed as a very drab character who's being thrust into a very seductively magical environment. And I absolutely love that. I think the character development is very, very fun. And I can see how he is the perfect character for this type of setting and this type of journey that he's being taken on. After especially seeing that ad at the end, I'm very curious to see how he's going to be how he's going to respond, and how his actions, or maybe his lack of actions, are going to take him deeper down the rabbit hole. All right, beautiful. So let's hop right into it. And by the way, if you're here in the stream, what did you think of it? Were there any parts of it that really stood out to you? Drop a comment down below. All right, so let's pull up. We'll start from the beginning over here. So I think the biggest, what is the opportunity is? Yeah, I mean, honestly, without knowing the overall structure, we know that this is an episodic type format. But without knowing the overall structure of the plot, I can't really speak to that too much. But in terms of just the structure of this specific excerpt, it's pretty good. Right now, I don't actually have too many problems. From the world building is great. The dialogue is great. I actually think the biggest opportunity is probably the character development, with potentially the plot, but I'll get into that. So I just have a couple of recommendations, but this goes without saying that the quality that it's at is definitely ready for editing. Absolutely. So really great work. Okay, so I know we had left off on poor Tom breaking up with Mandy and Starmond. Once again, loving that name, Starmond. Who doesn't wish that they had a stuffed Starmond? I think it was or was it a cat, right? It was like a cat or a dog, wasn't it? Or maybe it was a stuffed animal. I forgot. Starmond. Okay. That's right. And now I remember that there's a word requirement on these episodes. So that's right. So we can't be adding too much, which means that you're working within the confines of a maximum word limit. Okay. So with that being in mind, let's see what adjustments we can make. All right. So we're glancing down. I think, yep, his step with him feeling normal. I know that was the focus of the first episode, but I understand why you're touching upon it here, because this is each episode has to have an arc, essentially, similar to how we would see like a TV episode, even if it's part of a greater story. So the specific character arc in this episode is he is down on his luck. He feels redundant. So the theme of this specific episode, he feels redundant because his girlfriend just left, and clearly the inciting incident is this nameless voice, or it could potentially be the ad, but I'm more like to think that they're probably one and the same. So that's good. So that means that if the theme of this episode is redundancy and him feeling redundant, then we want to challenge what is he going to do differently to or what is he going to do to really play into that theme. As a side note, Penelope, there's a video game that I played a while back that I would highly recommend you check out. I don't know if you're into gaming at all, but it's specifically more because of the storytelling. Maybe go check out go read the narrative and the plot of it, because the narrative reminds me so much of this dynamic. It's a video game. It's called Catherine. I think it came out about 5 to 10 years ago. I think 5 to 10, maybe about 10 years ago. It was a platformer. It wasn't the gameplay itself was all right, but the storyline from it was very intriguing and is about a magical character that kind of gets in this guy's head. And it reminds me of the same exact character dynamic. Definitely check out. I would suggest reading the plot for the game. Okay. And let's see. So we're going here, we're going back here. Despite 2.6 million Chicagoans, is that what Chicagoans? Is that what they're referred to as Chicagoans? Stuffed teddy colored with markers. Okay, cool. I thought a Starmon was a stuffed mark teddy. Cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. Chicagoans. I would say just make sure to clarify. Are Chicago? Is that how they're referred to? I don't know. Just a random thought. Just a coffee, please. Okay, so here's the thing with the barista. So my first challenge, my first question is, if Tom has been coming to the same cafe, the same coffee shop for 5 years, doing the same thing day after day after day, then that means he would be a regular at this coffee shop. And that also means that every single barista in the coffee shop would know him. Every single barista in the coffee shop would know him, which means I don't think there's enough setup with this barista. Now, I understand that they're building the relationship and you're playing into the whole sexual undertone of it, which is great, incredible. Now there's 2 ways that I recommend going about this. I think I would just adjust. Either you go one of 2 methods. Option 1, the barista is brand new. He's never seen her before, and he recognizes that she is a new face. Okay. So as such, that would be a reason why nobody in the coffee shop knows him. I'm all right with this one. I would actually recommend option 2, is that this is a barista that has worked there for a while. She recognized him, but he's never been the type to really start a conversation or do anything differently. I would almost recommend that maybe he's seen her before, but he's never had the courage, or he's never worked up the courage to speak with her. But because the theme is he's feeling redundant, he needs to, we want to have him do something differently, recognizing this. Their dialogue is great. I think it's just the setup for the context of whatever their relationship is or lack of relationship is important. And I think you could set that up even in like a couple sentences. Super easy. Especially here, especially during this section here, because that's when he's realizing it. And I think that will make their exchange even more meaningful, especially whether or not she's a brand new barista or whether or not she recognizes him. Like, I would almost say that, like, just a coffee, please. Actually, I wouldn't even have them ask for a coffee. If this is coffee shop culture, Penelope, having worked in coffee shops for so long, she would already know his name, his order, and what to expect if he goes there every single day. So I think that would be, I would, as he walks in, they say just 2 sugars and no cream, Tom, and so. I would have them start with that. And then that's when he has this realization. And I would actually almost even argue that they could almost have it ready for him by the time he gets to the counter. Because, like, if you get the same thing every day, they anticipate. So then that would make him feel even more worse about him being predictable of that he does the same thing so often that he literally walks inside and they basically already know what he wants and already have it ready for him because he is so predictable. All right, and then we get into making a spark of unexpected. I absolutely love the descriptions. I love their exchange. Absolutely love that. Talking about the central vision. I think all this setup is good. If he's been in the coffee shop before, has he worked in the coffee shop? Does he probably has a table that he goes to? He probably likes to sit at the same table all the time, especially if he is a character of consistency. Everything about the coffee shop, he goes to the same coffee shop, likes to talk to the same baristas, likes to sit at the same table. It's like same habits, and I think I would play into that. And I would also make sure that give the coffee shop a clever name. Because yeah, I would have the barista be like, "Hey, welcome to Clever Coffee Shop." Oh, hey Tom, 2 coffees and no cream. And I would do that type of thing, so you don't have to set up the store, so you don't have to set up the description of it. Like the newspaper, he loaded the outdoors. Yeah, so he's basically looking for a job. It presented a messy world. He scrolled. I think you can, if you're trying to find places to cut down, I think you can cut down on his job searching just a little bit. It's kind of clear that he's looking for a job. But I would section just a bit if you're looking for places to cut down. Looking for something exciting today, Tom. Yeah, so I think this depends on how you would build familiarity. Yep, I think that would be a good. Yep, I think that would be a really great strategy, Penelope. Sometimes people don't like to give their names, then they just get remembered by their orders. I would say that's a really good idea. Now we have the looking for something exciting. Doesn't she have pretty lips? I absolutely love this. I think from a structural perspective, I would actually make this. I would make every time this character speaks its own paragraph, somebody to make it stand out a little bit more because that's intriguing. Anything good? And like you could even do something interesting of him giving the barista his name at the end and the barista being surprised since he never gives his name because he wants to do something different. That could be a way of him trying to do something different. I would say I would have him do something proactively, even though we're so earlier on in the story. Since the point of this is him feeling redundant, I would have him do some type of action that is out of character, even if it's completely odd, right? Looking for something exciting. I'm Tom because he's feeling redundant. Oh, and then that would create like a rapport for her to want to stay. I would say because it's so early, just something small that he feels like, oh, I need to be different today, because he's feeling redundant. Looks interesting. But yeah, and I think the rest of their conversation is pretty good. Like I don't actually have any complaints about their conversation itself. It's actually very strong. It's funny. I think the only adjustment I would make before he gets stuttering at the end, I would have the voice. I would add in like 2 or 3 more I would add in like 2 or 3 more lines, maybe like 2 more lines of the voice interjecting here. Because it feels like he gets to the end, he gets to this portion, and he's a little more flabbergasted than the voice is really disturbing him. I think the voice needs to, right in between the barista's line, the voice needs to say something that's a little more off-putting. Right now, the voice is very lowly subjective. She'd go to bed with you, the voice taunted. Absolutely, you would. I mean, sure, it's good to try new things. Oh, I bet she wants to try, or like you could do something like, oh, she'd probably want to try you bending and then like cut it off. You could do like some type of reference to some type of sexual thing, but don't actually spell it out. Just like start it or mention or something. um, something that he might be embarrassed about in with sex, and I think that would make him that would make him um come across even more like flabbergasted by this point. He really cuts loose in the next section, so I like foreshadowing that with the spontaneous. Yep. And I think if he does cut loose in the next section, then making sure that he is maybe in this section he tries to say something, but she just talks over him because he kind of mumbles. He tries, but he fails. So that might be the way to go. He tries to say something but fails. Oh yeah, sure. I actually so like the voice says something about his sex thing. He gets flabbergasted. Oh yeah, sure. I'd actually like to say, and she shrugged, talking to another customer. Oh, by the way, you could go about it any number of ways. Lila, I think Lila's a great name. And then I know we're over time here, Penelope, but my last recommendation is this ad is really interesting. I would almost recommend, because this ad has so much character depth in it, I would almost recommend him hopping onto his phone, him scrolling on his phone and seeing this as a video. Like I think this ad would come across way more mesmerizing if he's scrolling on his phone and an ad pops up and this is whatever character's talking to him. Just a recommendation, simply because if he's looking through the ads on a newspaper and this one stands out and this one is there among the help wanted ads, why not? Somebody would probably just think that it's a prank and he might just move on. But if he's watching it as an ad on a phone, or maybe there's a TV and he sees it on the TV and then it ends and he points to it and nobody else sees the ad. That's another way to do that. Like you could either like a magical ad pops up. Oh my God, that's unhinged. I love it. Yep. I would say either do it on his phone or have there be a TV in the cafe and have him be the only one to see the ad. And then when he calls it out, nobody, the barista is like, what are you talking about? So that's how I would go about that. And that, my friend, is all that I got for you. Woo! Love it. Really great work, Penelope. I'm definitely loving how episode 2 is coming along. And I am eager to see just how much growth. And I'm really interested to see Tom's character progress as we get into the later episodes. Really, really fun. Really, really great. Yeah, I almost thought about make sure that you I'm curious if you're going to have Jezebel do a little interludes with Jezebel at different points later on in the story. That's another question that comes to mind. But I also know you're on a word limit as well. So something that I've been thinking about. Yep, absolutely. All right, beautiful. So Penelope, thank you so much for sharing that. That was an absolutely great excerpt. Thank you. And what we're going to do is we're going to next hop into the thrilling next excerpt of Torrent, our thriller script with Miss Summers and the boys. We got some evil going on. I think Miss Summers is about to kill these boys. We're like, ooh, the pieces are coming together, but I don't think we're at the climax. I think we're at an intense scene. So we're going to be hopping into the next excerpt of Torrent by Sean Spence. And let's see. Perfect. Oh, Jess shows up every 3 episodes, I decided. Perfect. Awesome. So I'm glad that you have intention and a plan with that, which is incredible. Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Probably just so much talking. Or I'm getting sick, one of the two. Knock on wood. It's like all right, so what do we got next? By the way, if you're watching this on the stream or you're here on the replay and you're enjoying this experience, follow and subscribe. Right now is a daily writing variety live stream channel. We offer critique shows like this, podcasts where interview and sit down with published authors. We do daily writing sprints, and also we read from best-selling novels. We host guests. We did a 6-hour writing live stream a few weeks ago, and I have much, much more planned for the Right Now community. So make sure that you're following and subscribed, and you'll be alerted when we go live. All right, beautiful. So we're going to hop right into reading number 2, Torrent, a thriller script excerpt with Sean Spence. All right, and let me pull up. Awesome. All right, so I'm all set on my end. We got Torrent right here. Now, for those of you who haven't tuned into some of the previous episodes, we've gone through a good portion of the script so far. I want to say we're probably about 60 to 70% of the way in. At heart, we have a serial killer, Miss Summers, where she's basically lured these 2 young boys into her house. She just killed a neighbor who went over to talk with her, and we have the dad of the 2 boys, one of our 2 hero cops, who's just going to the house because the boy's phone just pinged from that house. There's some rapport between the Miss Summers and the cops, so we're going to see what happens. We are at a dramatic part of the story. I am eager to see who's going to get killed. What do you think is going to happen? If you're here in the stream right now, drop a comment. Do you think that the little old lady, Miss Summers, is going to kill them all? Do you think she's going to get arrested? What are your thoughts? All right. Torrent, pages 77 through 89. Exterior neighborhood night, same day. Through the rain, we see Billy behind the wheel of the light blue Ford Escort, speeding down the freeway. Billy swerves in and out of traffic, barely missing one car after the other. Interior, Miss Summers' home, kitchen, night. The 2 boys walking in the kitchen from the hallway, still holding hands. Miss Summers is on her hands and knees with a dish rag. A pot lays motionless on the floor. I am so sorry, boys. Just cleaning up a little mess. The boys stand motionless. Miss Summers catches their eyes and smiles. I have to be more careful. I always forget how hot these handles can get. We heard a scream. Well, of course you heard a scream. Have you ever burned yourself? You would scream like a banshee too. Are you all right? I will be. I will be. Miss Summer stands holding the empty pot in her hand. Could you both do me a favor and set the table? I have to get the pasta ready again. Sure. Brad squeezes Eric's hand lightly. You are both dolls. The silverware is over there in the cabinet. The 2 boys walk over to the tall cabinet at the end of the dining room. Brad opens up one of the drawers. Inside is a hunter's knife. As he looks at it, he notices red stains on the blade. The other drawer, my dear. The boys jumps, startled that Miss Summers is right behind them. She slowly closes a drawer with the hunter's knife. Maybe I should get the utensils since I know where they are. Go ahead and have a seat. The boys return to their seats while Miss Summers sets the silverware in front of them. So, will your grandson be home soon? Miss Summers stops setting the table. No, he won't. Tragically, he was killed a couple of years ago. Sorry, I didn't know. I just figured with his laptop on up in his room. Laptop? Oh, did I forget to shut that off? The boys don't answer. I can't remember what I was searching for. Did you get a look at it? No. No, we were charging the phone. Yeah, it's none of our business. That's right. It is none of your business. Well, it looks like your parents brought you up well. Miss Summers walks back into the kitchen and stares at the boiling water on the stove. You boys are in school now, right? Do you like history? Not really. That is a shame. You can learn so much from history. For instance, do you know who David Allen Gore is? The boys shake their heads. Miss Summers continues to stare at the boiling water. I think your father does. He quoted him to me the other day. I'm surprised he hasn't mentioned him to you. Well, this David Allen Gore was a very bad man, a serial killer, like the Dayton Devil, the man your father caught. The boys glance at each other. But it's not like he was a vigilante killing for the good of society. That would be noble in my mind. No, David Allen Gore just pretended to be a good Samaritan to gain the trust of his victims before dismembering them. Despicable. Miss Summers grabs a box of pasta on the counter without looking and pours it into the boiling water. Yet, he was more noble than that mentally unstable psychopath. Dayton Devil. That sick monster wouldn't just dismember his victims, he would eat them. If you ask me, that is just disgusting. Miss Summers looks up from the boiling pasta towards the boys, still sitting at the kitchen table. Who's hungry? Interior, William's home, night. Sarah sits backwards, kneeling on the couch, staring out the window towards Miss Summers' home. What the hell are you doing in there? This is bullshit. Sarah grabs her phone and dials 911. She continues to look across the street as the operator answers. 911, what is your emergency? My husband went next door to talk to my neighbor and he hasn't returned. Could you send someone out? I see you've called about your neighbor in the past. Could you please send someone over there? I'm going to need to get some information from you first. Sarah gets up off the couch and starts pacing the room in frustration. How about this for some information? If you don't send anyone out to 3025 Bessemer in the next 5 minutes, I will sue you, the police department, and this whole goddamn city. Is that enough information for you? Miss, your tone seems a bit harsh. Could we soften our approach? Send the police now! Interior, Miss Summers' home, dining room, night. Miss Summers sets a full plate of pasta in front of both Brad and Eric, sitting at the dining room table. As she goes back to the kitchen to get her food, Eric looks to Brad as if to say, should we eat it? Miss Summers grabs her plate, and as she turns around, sees Brad shake his head. To Eric. She walks back to the dining room and sits with the boys. I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure we will. Thanks again for all of this. It's the least I could do. Well, dig in. Eric takes Miss Summers' cue and takes a bite out of his pasta. Brad gives him a kick under the table. Eric kicks back before swallowing. So, how is it? It's been a while since I've had a great meal like this, Miss Summers. I like the way you say my name, Eric. Miss Summers smiles at Eric. She looks over at Brad, who is spinning his fork around the pasta. Her smile leaves her face. What's the matter, Bradley? I think I have a stomach ache. Nonsense. You haven't even tried it. Go on. Eric likes it, so it can't be that bad, right, Eric? Miss Summers spins some pasta on her fork and slowly lifts it to her mouth. She takes a bite and swallows. Brad looks down at his plate. A bead of sweat rolls down his forehead. He picks up his fork and spins a tiny amount of pasta on it. He closes his eyes as he puts it in his mouth. After a couple of bites, he swallows. See? That wasn't so bad. Brad dry heaves and quickly gets up from the table. Where is your bathroom? Bradley, I'm sure that... Bathroom! Down the hall to the left. Brad quickly runs down the hallway out of sight. The bathroom door slams shut. Miss Summers has a worried look on her face and glances over to Eric. It's not my best meal. I'm sorry. It was fine. I guess I wasn't as hungry as I thought. Eric sets his fork down. Awkward silence fills the air. How would you like to watch some TV just until Bradley feels better? Okay. Great. Interior, Miss Summers' home, living room, continuous. Miss Summers and Eric head into the living room. Eric looks around, searching for something. Miss Summers is suspicious of Eric's behavior. I hope it wasn't my cooking that made poor Bradley toss his cookies. No, I don't think we're we're just used to our dad's cooking. Dad says we've always had a very particular palate. Such a big word for a little man. Miss Summers watches Eric closely for a while. What are you looking for? The remote. Oh, let me get that for you. Miss Summers walks over to the couch and digs between the cushions. She pulls out the remote and clicks to turn on the television. Animal stuffers on Animal Planet illuminate the darkness in the room. Have you ever seen this show? It is one of my... Can you turn on the news? I guess to each their own. Miss Summers begins to channel surf, trying to find the local news. When she finds it, she pockets the remote. Eric sits on the couch watching the TV. The newscaster's voice faintly describes the police and ambulance around the local lake. A smile comes across Miss Summers' face. Well, enjoy. Interior, Miss Summers' home, bathroom, continuous. Brad has his head inside the toilet, vomiting. He wipes his mouth off on his sleeve as he flushes. His legs struggle to work as he stands and walks to the mirror. Gazing on his pale complexion, as he begins to gag again, he steps towards the toilet just in time, emptying more contents of his stomach. Interior, Miss Summers' home, hallway, continuous. Miss Summers listens through the closed bathroom door. Heaving and splashing permeate through. Are you all right in there? I'll be out in a minute. Miss Summers strokes the door. Her hand caresses the doorknob. As she tries to turn it, she feels resistance. Locked. 1 minute. Miss Summers looks down the hallway and sees the boys' jackets laying on the floor. A small puddle of water pools beneath them. She saunters to the jackets. The puddle beneath them flows open. The puddle beneath them flows under the door next to where they lay. She picks them up, opens the door, and tosses them into the room. Just for safekeeping. Shutting the door, she walks back to check on her guests. Interior, Miss Summers' home, hallway, staircase, continuous. Miss Summers walks up to the bathroom door and quietly listens. She can hear the faint crying of Brad echoing against the porcelain bowl. She slowly walks down the hallway past the living room, where Eric is still glued to the television. She heads upstairs to the second floor. Interior, Miss Summers' home, upstairs bathroom, continuous. Miss Summers turns on the bathroom light. She walks to the mirror by the sink and admires herself for a while. She slowly opens the mirror to reveal 4 rows of shelves, syringes filling the top rack, the bottom 3 shelves with vials. She methodically strokes her fingers past them until she sees the one she wants. Amobarbital. Perfect. All right, and we're going to end that reading there. Looks like we were able to get through a next good little portion of the script, actually. So, wow, once again, really, really great work, Sean. Another really good segment. Awesome. So that was really, really fun. I think what's done really well in this is we're building up the suspense even more and more. Now, here I thought that the Billy, the cops were going to show up immediately, but what we're doing is we're actually seeing a lot of suspense behind Miss Summer and the boys. And we had the moment where Miss Summers killed the neighbor, and obviously there's a scream, and then he dragged him away, and the 2 young boys come running downstairs, and she's just setting the table. And we're like, interesting. Okay. Interesting. We were expecting her to be caught in the act, right? But clearly Miss Summers has more tricks up her sleeve than anticipated. So what this part of the script does very well is it really ups the suspense and the scares of this one. All right, so let's dig into it. So I think my biggest recommendations is I would find as many moments as possible to add more suspense. I think we can find more moments as much as possible because we want to make this part of the script as thriller, as scary as it possibly can be. All right, so we start off with Billy is now swerving to get to the house. The 2 boys walking in the kitchen from the hallway. You know, it'd actually be really interesting if Billy's swerving to get to the house, if he's caught in some type of traffic because of something else that's going on in the story, whether that's the traffic of the thing going on at the lake, or whether he's caught behind like a bunch of the bikers, the gang members. I think that could be something interesting if it gives us another reason why Billy's taking so long. Let's see, the two boys. Okay, so my only challenge with this is just timing. So I know in the last scene, the neighbor, what was that? I think Roger came over, tried to speak with her, and she got angry and she basically stabbed and killed him. Um, at least I'm pretty sure it was a kill. I'm pretty sure she cut his throat. Now, the only thing that I'm questioning right now is her ability to basically drag him away and hide him from the moment that he screams and the two boys run downstairs. The way that it's framed right now, the two boys hear the scream, they run downstairs, and the body is gone. Now that is perfect in like a horror script. Like that is like this that does happen. So I'm actually not surprised by that. But I think from her being a little old lady, does she have the timing? Or I mean, from the moment of the scream to two young boys, it would take to get downstairs, probably 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds tops. So let's say 5 to 15 seconds. Now, in 5 to 15 seconds, does like logistically, does little old lady Miss Summers have the capability and the strength to be able to drag a body, which let's remember, dead bodies weigh a lot based on research. Um, I would say that would be an anticipated. She's dragging, what's that? Anywhere between 150 to 250 pounds, depending, right? For her frame, is that something that she's able to do at that fast? And I think logistically, that's just the one thing that I would challenge. Now, of course, it's possible and it makes sense. I think something to counteract that would be finding some way to hold the boys up for a moment before they get downstairs. Maybe that is, let's see, maybe that would be like Billy tries to call them and, no, because the phones are dead. I might almost recommend that the scream, and you could have framed it like this, I forgot, but I would recommend that the scream happens before right before they find the laptop. So the dead phone, the scream happens, like what? And then he's like, the laptop, right? So then it kind of adds like, okay, that's another couple extra seconds. Why are we on the laptop? They talk about that for 2 seconds, like, hey, we need to go downstairs. Um, so kind of just adds a couple of other seconds. I think we just need I think it's just finding another few seconds for it to be more plausible that two young boys will run downstairs in 10 seconds and that she's dragged the body away somewhere. Even if the body's under the table or even if it's in like a cupboard, right? I think I would just add to that just a little bit. Awesome. Hey, what's up, John? Welcome to the stream. Welcome. Hey, what's up, Saul? Welcome to the stream, my friend. Let's all come back. Let's remember a dead body weighs a lot. Yeah, so I mean, if based on research, you have to think about how heavy bodies are, like how much we weigh. So like the average human body is going to be what we weigh, what 150 to 250 pounds. Now, logistically, we're asking ourselves if a little old lady who's what 60 to 80 years old is dragging 200 pounds. What does that look like logistically? So I think that would be a really good that's just a really good thing to think about from a logistical standpoint. Great call out though, Saul. Thanks for mentioning that. All right, and what do we got next? I have to be more careful. And I think maybe you could almost do like when Miss Summers kills him, maybe she like covers his mouth so that way it's like a muffled scream. Because a muffled scream would make it sound more like it wouldn't break the plausibility of as much as if it was like her scream. But if they hear like a male scream, that could be a little subjective, right? And I think that might help a little bit more, making sure that she covers his mouth or tries to cover his mouth whenever he screams and dies. And I think this whole table thing is really good. I think I would add a moment in like the window, like something taps against the window and they all jump. Especially if it's storming outside. I think add some type of jump scare in this scene would be really good, especially when they're sitting in silence. This food scene of them eating is really smart. I think it works. I think having her eat the food as well is smart. It tells me that she probably has an immunity to whatever poison she's put into it. But that's really, really good. That's all great. Love it. The hunter's knife is interesting. Now, after with the series of events, with how many scares there have been so far in this part of the script, the question I'm asking is by this point in time, like let's think about all the oddities that they've seen, right? So she wants them to go inside. She wants them to charge the phones. Of course, she doesn't have a landline, right? So they have to charge the phones. They're up on the internet. She's having them eat a food. Um, there was a scream, and now there's a knife that looks like it has a red blood stain on it. I think this only one pushes the plausibility a little bit. I would actually recommend either taking this part out or, because we do want to build up the suspense, having her have a reasonable logistical explanation for it. Or having them find some other type of thing that would be suggestive, only because by this point I'm putting myself in the minds of like the boys right here of like, okay, by this point I'm probably like, all right, we're out the door, let's just walk to the gas station. I'm like, yeah, by this point let's just go walk to a gas station. So I think I would, whether you do the knife or whether you do something else, have her have a logistical reasoning for it right then and there instead of her trying to brush it off. But yeah, definitely keep a suspense moment. Just have there be more plausible deniability. Um, the boys jumped, startled. Hey, what's up? Welcome to the stream, Dirk. Welcome, my friend. Are you LGBT? Yes, I am. Thank you for asking. I want to say I've been bisexual now for about 10 years. So thank you for asking. We're actually just getting through this critique right now. Definitely make sure if you're just hopping to the stream and you want an excerpt of your story read, send an excerpt to Kaufman at the-creative-ghost.com. I will do a live reading and a free critique for you. Okay, and then I know the timer just went off, so let me just wrap this up really quick. Jump started with Miss Summers. And I think her talking about the dead grandson then gives her a reason for why their picture was pulled up on the screen. I think what I would do is I would actually have Miss Summers explain, instead of her trying to brush off the computer screen, if she knows that they saw it, I would have her say of like, I would have her play into her old lady forgetfulness of like, oh, now that I think about it, I was researching you guys. I was researching your dad after my grandson died, or add some type of tie-in so that way she can brush it off. It gives further plausible deniability instead of right now where she's just like, oh, the laptop, did I forget to shut it? I think having her call it out would actually her trying to make the boys feel more comfortable. Hence, it would give the boys a reason to be like, okay, we're going to eat the food. So I think I would do that instead of her trying to brush it off completely. All right, Dark, you are banned. Ah. All right, and what do we got next? I can't remember what I was searching for. Did you get a look at it? Let's see. No, we were charging the phone. Yeah, it's none of your business. Yeah, so all this stuff is fine. That's right. It's none of your business. Well, it looks like your parents brought you up. Well, I think this, yeah, and that goes in the internet portion. I would say because this guy's in the Dayton Devil. I feel like the Dayton Devil bit from her can just be shortened a little bit. I think it can just be shortened down. And when I say shortened, I think it can just be edited down just for more brevity. The Sarah and the operator portion's funny. Once again, love Sarah. I would just make sure to have her slam the phone on the police. I think I would do that. Send the police now. So he's probably dead. Have her like the police are only going to respond at this point if she makes a credible threat of like just something. Send the police now. He's probably dead. Slam the phone. Yeah, and I think all of the him getting sick stuff is good. The TV bit is fine. I don't have any issues with that. Summers and Eric. I think when it's just Miss Summers and Eric sitting down in by themselves now, it's probably a good moment to have the window do a window jump scare. And then the TV is fine. I feel like the TV scene, find another moment to add more suspense. And Miss Summers. Yeah, and then her basically going for the needle. I think that sounds like a good like next step. So, Sean, that's all that I got for you. I feel like we got through a good portion of the script, and we can literally tell now. Like, it looks like she's literally about to go drug the other boy. What was that, Brad, in the watching TV? Oof. My guess is she's gonna almost drug him, and then Billy's gonna knock on the door, the dad. So we'll see. Right now, it can kind of all be played off. Right now, at this point, she can still play the things off of that, like, oh, she invited them over. One of the boys got sick, plausible deniability. So we'll see. We're at an interesting part. But if Billy hears the call that the police were called in, I could see how this is all kind of going to a climax. So fun stuff. Eager to see what the next portion looks like. And thanks again for sharing this excerpt, my friend. All right, beautiful. And with that story, let's see. Next up, we got reading number 3. So we're going to be hopping into Eli's story next. The brief tenure of Vincenzo, brother Qetz, as historian of the Order of the Coatl. Hopefully I say that. I can tell there's a lot of pronunciations in this. It's a sci-fi excerpt by Eli Minkiewitz. So Eli, I got your story on deck. Absolutely. I know, plausible deniability. Okay. Exactly. Who cares what Eli thinks? Eli, I got your story on deck. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so by the way, at a moment, I just have to take a moment. I was thrown off in the middle of that I was definitely thrown off for a second in the middle of that critique, because I got a user in here who said something very inappropriate, and I actually haven't dealt with it too much. I literally just banned them immediately. But I know being on the internet and being at the beginning of this journey, there's definitely going to be people who have a lot of hate and who have opposing values. Um, I think it's one thing for people to share an opposing value or a different ideology. That's fine. But the moment that anything becomes like hateful or any type of hate speech, whether that's to myself or to any of the community members, I think that's just an immediate ban. I kind of like this is something I think through of like, okay, in the future, of course, the more people that come, the more we'll get distinct personalities, but then the more that there's also going to be haters, right? There's always going to be haters, especially the more with the age of the internet. There will be trolls. That will come, and that's fine. But I think because I've dealt with I haven't had too many of like extreme hate comments up until this point. I'm like, okay, it's just interesting. It just kind of threw me up because I haven't dealt with it too much, so it's a little new to me. And I thought that I was considered a troll. What was it about? Oh, it was literally they asked what my if I was LGBT, and then I shared that, and then they basically just shared how I was a disgusting scum of the earth. I like I should have called it out a little bit more, and because it's not in like the grand scheme of things, it's not something that actually bugs me, but it's more like when it's more that I kind of have to think through beforehand of when I get comments like that, comments that are like very extremely hate speech, of what's like the right way for me to respond. Obviously, they're banned automatically. Like, obviously, they're like that goes without saying. Anybody says some type of hate speech, automatic ban. But I'm thinking through also like, how do I go about like verbally responding to it? To what extent? I know some content creators will get passionate and like get emotional and get fiery about it. Others will ignore it. I just don't know how I feel about the response to it. So yeah, that's ban worthy. Honestly, Jared, there are bots on here that do that. Interesting. I'm not surprised by that. I haven't dealt with what a creep. No place for that kind of talk, in my opinion. I know. I completely agree. I think that's why I continue to be surprised. I mean, we're what 202 days into consecutive writing streams, and I think I just keep thinking I'm like I keep thinking I'm going to get more of that as like a percentage of showing up consistently, and I don't. And it just makes me continue to feel so grateful to each of you who are here in my community, because we have such kindness, we have such love and such respect that we're growing in this community, especially for our creative endeavors and what we want to put out in the world. So it just makes me really appreciate the community that we have here, and each of you for coming and joining. I know John and Eli, you're here right now. I really appreciate both of you. Ignore it. If you respond to a troll, they keep coming back. Yeah, and it's interesting because I haven't dealt with too many trolls yet. And now, of course, like then it's also different dealing with trolls when you're in a live experience. So I'm like, I just don't know what the right way is to deal with it. Like, okay, do I just ignore it? Like, I don't know. Because I think about my morals, right? And I think about what is the message that I want to set to just the world and the community. Um, and I think people are going to say hateful things to you. People will always be. But instead of me feeling less about myself and my self esteem, the mindset I come out with is if somebody says something hateful to you, it says more about them. I would rather just deploy empathy. I feel bad for you that you have so much hate in here that you have to come into a YouTube video and say something like that. To me, that just tells me how miserable you are with your life. Like, I'm never going to talk to you again. You're obviously going to be banned, but I I always believe in taking the moral high ground because I don't think that I need to respond with any type of negativity. I feel bad for them, and good luck with life. That's what I got for that. Yeah, you did well by banning them. Don't pay attention to those people. They're insecure assholes. Hope no more people like that appear on the channel. Aw. Yeah, Saul, thank you. Thank you so much, my friend. Really appreciate the words. And the bigger your platform, the more of that you'll get. Yeah, exactly. Right. And that, like, I definitely recognize that, because we see the big, like, and let's just say, like, the live streamers, right? We see the big live streamers, and you get the trolls, you get that type of negativity. I would say it becomes about a 10 to 15% because it's the internet. I guess I've just been surprised I haven't dealt with it or seen it too much so far. So, but that tells me that YouTube is delivering this and putting this out, at least just the YouTube community, to the right audience, to people who care about the same values, which I think is incredible. In some sense, it's a really crappy symptom of stream growth, and while gross can also indicate that what you're doing is working. That's a really great way to look at it, Eli. Thank you. That's a really great way. Yeah, and I think also the niche, every niche is different in terms of the level of toxicity. The gaming niche has a lot of toxicity. I know that for a fact. The gaming niche, if I was a gaming streamer, the toxicity is probably closer to like 30 to 40%. But I think because I'm a writing streamer, the toxicity will probably be about 5-10% maybe as my channel grows. I probably won't see it more until I get past the 1,000. Probably till I get past like the 1,000 sub mark. I'll probably see it a little bit more. People who hate like that are unhappy with themselves and have no clue how to deal with it. I know, right? And this is why like my motto is like, everyone should just go to therapy. Everyone just go to therapy. Talk to a therapist. Find the right therapist. Find the right therapist for yourself. It's trial and error, just like anything else. Find the right therapist, talk to somebody, figure it out. It takes time. It's a lifetime of work. I still think YouTube is doing some social manipulation with bots. I've seen the pattern of that on other platforms. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Either could be true, right? It could be that there's no manipulation. It could be that there's a lot. But the truth is, without like facts, it just becomes like theorizing. I basically can only respond to the evidence that's presented in front of me based off these statistics. Don't acknowledge, ignore, and ban. Sorry that happened to you. People are ignorant. Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think like I don't feel any like lesser way about it. I think it's more it's like just a reminder of, do I have a pre-existing system and how do I want to respond to it? Like anything else with the live stream experience, after 200 days of doing this, I've learned it's just a matter of having systems in place of how do we respond to certain things. And it's that more than anything else. But I really appreciate all you. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you very much. That's part of a gamer talking smack. They're going too far about what is hate speech and what is not. Yeah, I mean, part of gaming culture is like talking smack is fine. Like that's when you're gay, like talking smack is one thing. I think it's one thing to be shit talking with other people, especially from gaming my entire life. But then it's another thing to be directly using hate speech. I think there's that divide. And I see a lot of on Twitch often is that line is crossed a lot, and the lack of like what's the right way to have fun and then what's the wrong way gets crossed all the time. And people feel a way, especially with gaming. Yeah, gaming has such a toxic culture. It's hard to be a successful gaming streamer for sure. All right, beautiful. And speaking of that, yeah, you know what I actually think I might do, and I've been thinking about this for a while. I'm thinking about a new series that I'd like to start. I think I'll probably do a discussion on mental health, because one of our previous podcast episodes on mental health was super popular. And I think, well, mental health as it pertains to being a writer and being having a writing brand in the 21st century. So maybe I'll start a series just talking so we can chat about mental health. That could be fun. I don't think I've really framed any episodes as just a discussion, but that could be exciting. Yeah, Eli, and I think that's the right way to call it. I think that's the right way. Talking shit to your opponent in a competition to gain a competitive edge is not the same as saying out of pocket shit in a stream and stealing the platform for that. Amen, my man. All right. So those excellent conversation. Thank you all for that. I really appreciate that. Now, as I'm getting back into the stream here, as I went on a little bit of a tangent, thank you all for chatting. I really appreciate that. All right. So what do I have next? So we're going to be hopping into Eli's story. We have a little bit, we have a sci-fi excerpt, which I'm super stoked to hop into. And by the way, I offer alpha and beta reading services. So if you have a rough draft for a story and you want, so this is the cheapest of my services. This is for you if you're on a budget, you just finished the rough draft, or maybe you have a couple of drafts of the story done and you need feedback. The rate that I charge at equals to about 20 an hour. I set this intentionally lower than both my coaching and editing services to help those of you who are on a budget but need feedback. It's essentially at heart, it's what I'm doing here in the Story and Critique Show, but it's going a little bit more in depth because it allows me to think a little more critically while I'm not in the middle of doing a live reading and responding in the moment. So if you're needing alpha and beta reading services for your story, definitely reach out to me. It's a matter of basically, I equate it to about 20 an hour. I think through how many hours it takes me to read a story. So based off word count and based off style, then I can give a price point. So definitely reach out to me. Send me an email over at kaufman@the-creative-ghost.com down in the YouTube description below if you want to know more or if you're needing feedback on your story. Absolutely. And by the way, perfect. And let's see. Next, we got, oh, by the way, we're still doing the comment of the day game. So keep those comments coming and I will add them to the list. Let's see what we got. Let's see. The chat hasn't been super active today. Let's see. I'm glad that I spelled the name of your story right, by the way, Eli. You nailed. Uh Coatl is like Coatl, like the end of Seattle. Coatl. Okay. Qetz Coatl. And I thought it was considered a troll. Perfect. Yeah, Mass Toaster, that was another thought that was on my mind as well, because it is a little bit of a longer title. So where we're about to hop into it, Eli, I'm gonna pull your story up now. But once again, keep the comments coming. The top comments I will select at the end will be the winners, and they'll be added to the to my leaderboard for comments for the comment of the day game. So definitely keep those comments coming. I judge comments based on comedic value, cleverness, and or helpfulness to the writing community. So keep those comments coming. Now, as we're hopping into Eli's story here, let's see. So I will, here we go. All right, I am already on my end. Let me reset the timer and hop back into the comments. 20 an hour to read a story and get feedback is a good rate. Yeah, when I was looking alpha and beta reading services, John, I think the national average for them ranged, low end was about 14 an hour, high end was about 28 to 30 an hour for alpha and beta reading services. So I priced myself on the low to mid end to try to help out the community and create another low cost option for writers who don't have a lot of money to invest in their stories yet. Great video today, but I need to head out. Have a great evening. Yeah, thanks, Emma. Thanks for stopping by. All right, beautiful. Let's hop into it. So we'll see. We'll see. Let's see what the story sounds like first, and then we'll hop into the titling of it. I think the Mass Toaster had an interesting call out about is the title too long? And I think Eli, the question we ask ourselves of like, okay, if a reader's gonna pick this up off the shelf, does the title create an intrigue or is it going to be too much for a reader? I think it can go either way. Right now, it's called The Brief Tenure of Vincenzo, brother of Qetz, as historian of the Order of the Coatl. All right, 20 minutes on the clock, and let's do it. 1. Arrival. Brother Vincenzo. Brother Vincenzo woke up when the ship entered the magnetosphere and was greeted by the familiar and always unwelcome knowledge that he'd slept on his arm. When he was a boy, this was a near nightly occurrence, but he trained himself over the course of his 70 years to sleep in such a way that most mornings found him without so much as a stiff back, except, of course, when he slept in a sleeper box, in which case, all bets were off. In addition to his hand lingering in sleep while the rest of him labored to wake up, the sleeper box set off a fit of claustrophobia before he realized where he was. A sleeper box on the shuttle to Ganymede. For a second, the small box, roughly the size of a coffin, felt just as he'd always imagined, being buried alive would. Now he knew where he was, and familiarity, as it always does, bred acceptance. He opened the lid of his sleeper box and yawned, and stretched deeply, trying to force the blood into his left hand to get rid of the pins and needles throbbing that radiated from his fingers. With his right hand, he fumbled around the small panel on the inside of the sleeper box until he found the button for the comm. Brother Vincenzo, you're awake. I trust you slept well. Once he finished his stretch, Vincenzo laid back down in his sleeper box and faced the comm's view screen. The sister on the other end was a blonde woman, maybe 25, with white milk skin, a slender pointed nose, and deep green eyes. She wore the emblem of her sisterhood on the collar of her muted blue blouse. Her eyes struggled to focus on her face, but were mesmerized by the emblem. It was an embroidered patch in the shape of the patron mother of the sisterhood, Gen Gensi, goddess of love. She, with her 8 arms, holding aloft her torch. Her skin a deep indigo. Brother? She asked again, politely. Suddenly, he regained his senses, and recognition washed over him. He knew this young sister. Oh, yes, Sister Heloise. Hello. Yes, I'm perfectly well. I only just woke up. I'm terribly sorry to trouble you, but would you mind telling me how long until we arrive? Sister Heloise smiled warmly. We've just entered the magnetosphere. We'll be landing on Ganymede momentarily. Thank you, sister. Can I get you anything, Brother Vincenzo? He asked. No, he said. I think I'll be all right. Well, I believe I'll need some assistance with my luggage. Of course, Sister Heloise smiled. She stretched her arms in front of her with her palms pressed lightly together and slowly spread her hands apart in a sort of a V, keeping her wrists together in the traditional farewell of her sisterhood. A strong young man came to help with the luggage, just as Sister Eloise assured him, and Vincenzo, brother of the Qetz, departed the shuttle and took his first tentative steps onto Ganymede, the mysterious moon that would be his new home. He had never been to Ganymede because people didn't go to Ganymede without business there. Vincenzo could see why now. He walked through a long hermetically sealed tube that connected the shuttle bay with the transport hub. Every 10 meters was a porthole through which he could see the inhospitable surface. He'd seen photographs of the surface before, but to be here in person, how many cataclysms can one world endure? He wondered. In what sense? Mused the strong young man shyly, knowing Brother Vincenzo was talking to himself. For his part, the brother had forgotten the young man was there and started suddenly and wheeled around to face him when he heard him speak. By the makers! Brother Vincenzo gasped, clutching at his chest through his silken orange tunic. How many cataclysms can a world endure at the hands of the makers? If I were of such a disposition, I'd pray I never lived to find out, said the strong young man, and then he paused and threw a moment before continuing. I can say this much, though. This world has seen its share. They say that when Jepolon was joined to Oz, it enraged their brother, Jepolon. He and Jepolon were twins. It only seemed natural to him that they ought to be joined. So when Oz made it this place as a gift to his wife, their jealous brother vowed to knock it out of his sky. I've lived on Ganymede all my life, and I can tell you that the sky god has never forgotten his vows. Brother Vincenzo was suddenly filled with a shame he hadn't felt before. It was this young man had lived his whole life. Then the rumors must be true. The awful rumors about this place. Of course, he'd heard of the labor camps, the black bags, the indefinite sequesters, but he'd convinced himself that the order of the Coatl was a fairy tale. He'd needed to once his promotion was announced. As soon as word spread through the monastery, his brothers had been relentless. Beware the black dragon god of Ganymede was written in piped icing on the cake that was served at his farewell dinner. He chuckled at it then. The line was lifted from a famous play about the order which was popular in his youth. Now that he was here with the strong young man, it didn't seem funny at all. The strong young man could see Brother Vincenzo's shame and smiled warmly to comfort him. That's all right, Brother Vincenzo. It's nothing you had a hand in. At this, Brother Vincenzo felt faint. He swooned and flailed his arms, searching for something to hold on to. When he found nothing, he was unable to keep his balance and fell hard on the ground. The strong young man played Brother Vincenzo's luggage calmly on the ground and easily picked the lock of one of the cases and began reading any and all documents contained therein. This finished, he collected Brother Vincenzo tenderly in his great burly arms and carried the old monastic and his luggage into the inky depths of the tube toward the transport hub. 2. First morning on Ganymede. When Brother Vincenzo woke up, he was in a wholly unfamiliar place. He was pleased to find that he hadn't slept on his arm, but quickly felt a throbbing in his head that he would gladly have traded for 2 numb hands. He searched his surroundings for anything he could recognize, or for something that would tell him where he was. It appeared to be a dormitory. It was furnished cozily in an understated way. There was a sleek bureau against one wall with elegant stationery and an ornate lamp in the shape of his patron maker, Qetz, god of time. Interesting. And whose source of illumination was the orange god's flaming sword, which glowed softly and provided the only light in the room. There was a conventional overhead light recessed in the ceiling, but this was turned off. He stretched and pressed his hand against the right side of his head. This was where the throbbing seemed to emanate from, and rose from the bed. Now that he was standing, he could see that there was a letter on the bureau. Brother Vincenzo shuffled across the smooth, semi-reflective floor to the bureau and opened the letter, which he read aloud to himself. Brother Vincenzo, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to Ganymede, sovereign protector of the Martian interplanetary empire. Please make yourself comfortable in your quarters as best as you are able. If anything about them is not to your liking, do be sure to bring it to my attention right away. Had your arrival not been marred by so unfortunate an incident, you would have had your picks of our available rooms. To that end, once you have made a full recovery, I will be happy to give you a complete tour, upon completion of which you may select your permanent residence. Your belongings have been moved into the closet across from the bureau where you found this letter. Please get dressed and use the compound on the wall above the bureau to raise your liaison. Versin Jeterix. He is a promising young legate, and he will assist you in familiarizing yourself with your new duties until you are up to speed. The sudden retirement of your esteemed predecessor has left a great deal of work backlogged, so do be sure to make full use of his services. And after you have been verified by Versin Jeterix, I would be honored if you would join me for lunch in my dining room. Until then, may the makers smile on you. Brigadier General Marcus, Commandant of Ganymede. Okay, so I'm going to stop the reading there. I think that's a good stopping beat. First off, you do a lot of incredible world building in the story. Really great work here. Really, really good. I'm absolutely loving the story elements and the world building. You have a lot going on in the story. I think right now, out of the first 1.25 chapters that we read through, I would say that the strongest part of this is absolutely the world building and potentially the plot. Plot can be a little hard to speak to when we do excerpts, but I feel like there's probably been a good deal of foreshadowing done. But I'm loving the world building so far. I think there's some absolutely good character development moments, but I think we could actually elevate this and dig into the character development a little bit more. There's a couple of structural opportunities, but that's actually less structural, more just like grammatical fixes. So let's dig into it and see what we got here. So first off with the names. So my guess is that the naming structure is focused on, I think you said it's Aztec. So because a lot of the names are a little hard to pronounce, but from a reading perspective, you giving me the pronunciations was amazing. Thank you for that. If this is ever published, Eli, especially because every single name can sometimes, like Vincenzo is a little easier, but some of the names and terminology is a little more challenging. Make sure that if this is ever published to include a what's it called? Include a pronunciation guide. Whether usually you'll see those at the ends of the books. Sometimes they can be at the beginning as a forward, but make sure to include a pronunciation guide with each of the different names and how they're pronounced. It's a great way to help readers. And even though I know like very little about Aztec culture, my guess is that a lot of the names are probably a derivative of Aztec culture. Even though a lot of them are difficult to pronounce, the naming scheme feels very, very similar for a lot of them. So I think that's actually a really good, really, really good start based on just what I'm seeing. But I think that's really, really good. Let's see, what do we got next? So we have him waking up in the ship, landing off on the planet. I think what I would recommend, Eli, with this beginning portion is right now what we do is we do a little bit more character development and world building. He opened up the lid of his sleeper box. I think what I'm missing at the beginning is I need some type of plot. I need some type of foreshadowing of what is like what's something that's going to keep the reader, that's going to hook the reader. I would say woke up in the ship, they slept on his arm. Yeah, because we're essentially what you're doing is you're relying on character development to pull the reader in. And I mean, this is something that like sleeping on your arm, like that's something that we can all relate to, but there's nothing about that like action that is like incredible that hooks me. So what I would recommend is two things. Either option one, I would throw in some type of plot or some type of foreshadowing in the first paragraph of like brother Vincenzo woke up when the ship entered the brother Vincenzo woke up in a fright. He had a nightmare. He had a nightmare of something and refer some type of foreshadowing and he had a nightmare thinking of so-and-so, but he lost the rest of the nightmare. He grabbed his amulet, the god of Qetz, the god of time, and did some type of signal. That would be a really interesting way to wake up because we get foreshadowing, and then we also get a unique character development or unique world building that we've never seen before. So that would be the one way to go about it. I know we saw another Mass Toaster. I saw you said starting him with landing on the planet. That's another way you could go about it. You could also just skip ahead through this first little part and have him start with it. I think either way could work, but I think you need to do something in there that really would hook the reader in beyond just character development would be my recommendation. Let's see. The purpose of this piece was to serve as a sort of tone setter for a larger project. I heard that Tolstoy wrote Sevastopol letters to help get his ideas in order. Yep. I don't know too much about Tolstoy, but I did remember hearing about that in school. The only yeah. I never really planned on publishing it all, just trying to explore different parts of a big world. Okay, so this was more like of a practice piece. Yeah, so and if you did ever decide to go back to it, I would say just focus on a hook would be the first focus. But that definitely makes sense that this is focused on world building because like 75% of this excerpt so far is world building focused. So that actually totally makes sense. You totally achieved what you were trying to set out for then, my friend. Really, really great work on that sense. And once again, you do good jobs with the little descriptions, like the sister, the blonde woman. I think that's unique, right? You do a good job of setting her up. She's a blonde woman, 25, milk white skin, slender, pointed nose, and deep green eyes. Nothing that we haven't seen before, but I think that's unique enough for her. But the emblem of the sisterhood. So once again, we're getting more world building, which is really interesting. It was an embroidered patch, and I love this, right? So we get so much world building about it that it's just so intriguing. It's very, very intriguing. Yeah, and I think of this first part, we don't have too much about Vincenzo yet. And I think you could maybe throw in some more elements earlier on of like what makes him stand out. But so far, we're getting a lot more about the characters around him, which can actually work sometimes. Sometimes protagonists can be kind of blank slate characters, so to speak, and everything around the protagonist is more incredible. That is an absolute way to go about it. And once again, it's with these names. Like, even though I'm always of the mindset of make the names easy, your naming scheme for all the characters feels like they almost fall into their own category of naming. And I think this excerpt is actually a good example of how you could potentially do more difficult names, but keeping all of them, making it feel like it's of the same language. And I like this. And it's once again, these parts I highlighted, they're just really good world building. I want to know more about the sisterhood. She has this like type of like what's this? This type of like hand symbol that represents her face or that represents her faith, which is interesting. She stretched her arms in front of her with her palms pressed lightly together and slowly spread her hands apart in a sort of V. I stretch her arms in a V, keeping her wrists together. Oh, I see. So it's like this. I'm like thinking she stretched her arms in front of her with her palms pressed slightly together and slowly spread her hands apart in a sort of V, keeping her wrists together. The traditional farewell of the sisterhood. So it's like interesting. Yeah, it's just unique, and I think that's what's fun about it. The first like world building that actually really stood out to me, Eli, I called it out a little down here. I'll come back to that, but the first one that I absolutely loved was the reference to Qetz, the god of time. I was like, oh, Qetz is the god of time. I love that. Throw this reference in the beginning. Like this like illumination with the orange flaming sword. This is more unique. Like I want this in the first paragraph. This is such an interesting dynamic. I'm like, that's interesting because then it makes us question the character development. Okay, why does brother Vincenzo There was a sleek bureau against with elegant and an ornate lamp in the shape of his patron maker, Qetz, god of time. Uh, okay, so Qetz could be actually more part of this, the world, and less about Brother Vincenzo. So I take that back. But that was the thing that I was very intrigued about. Okay, and then we get to the conversation with how many cataclysms can one endure. Okay, I thought this was a dialogue. I thought this was a quotation problem, but that's fine. That's fine. This portion here with the a young man explaining the world. I would actually get rid of this portion only because we want to further, because you are doing a lot of world building. We want to further the plot a little bit, and I don't want the reader to get lost on that there's so much overt explanation. What's interesting is then when Vincenzo gets down here and he's hearing about like how dark this world is. And then we get a little bit of his backstory. This more of this. So I would actually just move this world building to a little later in the story. Absolutely. Or even just have the young man touch upon it. That would be my recommendation. Have the young man maybe touch upon it in like a sentence or two. But let's get to the character development of Brother Vincenzo. Because this is interesting. Like his brothers have been relentless. Beware the black dragon god of Ganymede. I almost wonder, Eli, like this quote, beware the black dragon god of Ganymede. What like that? What if that was like a quote that was at the very beginning, the hook of like he woke up in a dream from a fervor as he mouthed the words, beware the black dragon god of Ganymede. Like that would be a really interesting foreshadowing. And then you come here and we're like, oh, that's why that's on his mind. So that could be a way to go about it. But yeah, I love this character development here is really great. Awesome. And then we just get to the end of that chapter. That's just furthering the story. I love once again, your descriptions, Eli, is always really great. You do a good job of setting up this room that he's in. He has this thing of sleeping on his hands. He was pleased to find that he hadn't slept on his arm, but quickly felt a throbbing in his head. Okay. So he's having a headache again, wondering if the headache is foreshadowing. Some appear to be a dormitory. Yeah, once again, love the god of time. That's a win for me. And I like the orange sword illumination thing is cool. I would say just edit this down a little bit. I don't think all the description's necessary, but I think this gives us a good sense. And then we get the letter. So with the letter from a pure formatting standpoint, I think the way that you format a letter, and you actually kind of did this, and this could have just changed because of the way that I copied it over. But I think with letters, I think you actually would keep the whole thing indented on the same line. And then I think you would italicize. I mean, you don't. Yeah, I think when I see it formatted in books, I think letters you italicize the full letter, so we know that it's. I mean, you made it clear here, and formatting could be it. I would just research that, Eli. I don't remember what the correct formatting is for letters, but I think you italicize letters like that. And you do a good job here of laying out all the things. The letter itself is just a little lengthy. I would try to cut the letter down maybe by about 25%. And I think you could still get the same point across, because some of these things it sounds like could probably be touched upon as when he meets the guy, or a little later in the story. But other than that, I'm intrigued. Brigadier General Marcus, Commandant of Ganymede. Once again, you do a lot of the makers, you do a lot of great world building, a lot of great names, a lot of great stuff going on. So overall, Eli, really great story. It's definitely a really intriguing little sci-fi story. Thanks again for sharing it. I would love to see if you ever develop that. I know your focus is on your main book series now, but this is an intriguing little deep dive into sci-fi and world building. So really, really great work. I can kind of see how you've had a lot of really great success with descriptions and world building, and your strengths really show here, my friend. Really great work. Awesome. So let me just make sure I just check the comments again. Sometimes make sure I didn't miss anything. All right. Penelope put up a funny quote here earlier. Speaking as a former historian, that title is too short by 3 to 4 sentences. Is that maybe that's a thing though? Maybe historian, I don't know anything about about the history, that type of genre, but maybe like is long titles a thing there? And that could be like a thing, that could be a culture thing for anybody for like historical texts. I don't know. So there could be truth to that. I think that's also another strategy because Eli, you would also think about if like this did ever get put out there, you think about what's the name that pulls people in, and you like shorten the main title name itself, but then you have it by the full name on the second page. That could be another way to go about it. Let's see. You're saying this feedback is definitely appreciated. I think it could definitely be turned into a very short collection of short stories, slash sketches with more character. Yeah, I'm absolutely agreed. I think Eli, if you ever, this is my recommendation with this type of thing. I think you could edit it. I think you could give it a little more work without taking too much time. And then this is the type of thing that you submit to like a short story contest. Submit this to magazines. It's a great way to get your work out there. Because you do some really great things in there. It just needs a little bit more focus on the hook of the story and the character development, and then just editing down. But this is definitely the type of thing you could submit to like a magazine or a journal. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm like glad I got that gesture. I kind of had to read it for a second, but I'm like, I always find things like that intriguing. And so you're saying in my original idea, the main character of a big novel would replace Vincenzo after he mysteriously dies. The formatting got wonked from the copy, but it didn't. Okay, cool. So as long as you're aware of that with the letter, then that's good to know. Thank you. My style seems to be trying to hook people with world building. And that's the thing. You can hook people with world building, but you have to do it in a way that's unique, right? My recommendation, Eli, is think about your favorite books that hook people with world building. Their stories hook people with different things all the time. Some stories hook people with character development. Some stories do it with dialogue. Some stories do it with an event. Some do it with world building. You just look at examples in the genre and see what are examples that work, like best-selling novels, things that are classics that work, that pull people in. I think with from a world building perspective, usually a unique mythology seems to work well. Usually using unique world building elements that immediately connects a reader with something that they can relate with tends to work. With world building, you want to rely on a theme to hook somebody in generally. Okay, that's cool. So I'm glad we picked up on the history bite from that. Absolutely. It sounds like Penelope gets the gold star for his history recognition of this piece. Yeah, I think that'd be another good way to go about it as well. That's awesome. Ooh, man, long titles definitely. To other historians, signal historical works. My thesis was like 23 words. Ooh, man, the title, that's crazy, right? But that comes down to know your genre. So that's awesome. I would never know that. But my major was creative writing. And I think for my thesis, we had the option of either doing it was like a research paper about a creative subject, or we could do a creative short story. And I think I did like 100-page short story for my thesis. It's really good. And you know what's actually really cool? My thesis professor, sucked at staying in contact with her, but she's a very predominant author in the sci-fi community. Nalo, I want to say it's Nalo Hopkinson. She's an excellent sci-fi writer, but she did she was my thesis professor, and then I saw some of her stuff online blow up a little bit. I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Too bad Jared wasn't always great at networking in his early days. Desolate. Quick question. Am I allowed to submit a fanfic for critique? Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're actually about to hop into a fan fiction next, Desolate. And this is a good call out for Soul. Soul, your story is on deck. We're actually going to be doing a One Piece fan fiction next. Absolutely. But this is what I have to tell you guys with fan fiction. And I realized this the hard way a couple streams back. Fan fiction is a little different. I realized there was a My Little Pony fan fiction. I want to say this is about, I think 3 or 4 streams ago. And what I learned is that it's a little harder for me to give an honest critique with fan fiction if I don't have as much knowledge of the world. So like I can speak to the character development in it. I can speak to the world building, but with fan fiction, those things are usually set and it's more focused on how are we creating our own story within a set of rules. So absolutely you can submit fan fiction, but just know I may not be able to provide as a subjective great experience about the fan fiction if I am not aware of the world already. For Souls with One Piece, I've watched a lot of One Piece. I don't know. I think I got through about, I don't know, 60% of the anime. So you might be able to give me better context. I see you here. I think I got somewhere beyond the Impel Down arc. No, I got somewhere after the brother execution arc. I forgot. I think they're crossing to some other part of the world. I forgot what arc I stopped on, but I think I know I got pretty far into the series, so I know I have enough knowledge of the One Piece universe that I can actually speak to it. Yeah, so and definitely if you want to submit an excerpt, I'll throw the stuff down in the chat below. Send an excerpt over to my email, Kaufman. It's down in the YouTube description down below, the requirements on how to send it. So definitely send it over. I'd love to take a look at it. Yes, that's the story gave me Foundation vibes. Eli, what I would do is like look at the introduction of Foundation, because Foundation is very much a world building first story. Look at how Foundation sets up hooks the reader. That's another great idea. Let's see. Not that I'm on his level, but like Lord of the Rings has the note on hobbits at the beginning who says you can't have a brief exposition at the beginning. That's interesting. You know, it's been so long since I've read Lord of the Rings. You know, what's funny is I've watched the movie so many times. I was like, I don't think I have the first Lord of the Rings book on my bookshelf right now. I would have actually I totally pulled up because I'm actually kind of curious on what the Lord of the Rings the first page looks like. It's been a while since I've read it. Lord of the Rings first page. So I'll let you guys see on the screen here. I'm just pulling it because I was actually kind of curious myself. Lord of the Rings, I just want to see what the first page was. The first chapter is a long expected party. Shortly. So even for Lord of the Rings, you could see that there's still there is a lot of world building in it, but even J.R. Tolkien still starts with an event. He starts with the event of Bilbo Baggins with an announcement party. And what's also done as well is Tolkien, like many authors, relies on, like many authors also relies on not just the writing, but the chapter in hooking the reader. Let's remember that. The chapter title is also another way to hook a reader. I love using chapter titles. I have always been a fan of chapter titles. It's not necessary, but it's another strategy to hook readers, right? So then the reader goes into this being like, okay, some type of party, sure. And then it speaks of Hobbiton. All right, world building. We get character development with Bilbo. And he's described as being a kind of odd character. Mm-hmm. So in the first page, we have world building, character development, and foreshadowing and intrigue all on the first page. There's a reason that Lord of the Rings is one of the most classic, well-known pieces of fantasy that literally define the fantasy genre, quite literally, and spawned many movies that were great, and much more franchises and more stuff that's coming out. So there's a reason that that was done very well. Okay, I was just kind of intrigued by that. I wanted to check that out since you called it out, Eli. Okay, so let me pull up Souls. Soul. We got our little One Piece fan fiction. And by the way, I guess this is probably a good call out. Let me throw up the banner. By the way, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. Make sure, oh, I had my share with a friend this time. It's funny. But make sure that you're following and subscribed. I stream every single day. We got all types of writing community stuff with the Right Now community. So make sure you come join the community, and many more writing streams and writing critiques to come, my friends. Okay. So let's hop straight into Soul's story. We got One Piece set up here. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I saw you had given I saw your notes in it beforehand. Oh, Eli, there's probably a prologue to it, isn't there? I'd have to go back and check. Yeah, I think that could be another interesting way to go about it. Absolutely. You could use the mythology. Oh, well, Mass Toaster and him interacting with that myth. Let's see, not a fan yet, but I'm starting to like this stream and the community. Well, glad to have you, Mass Toaster. We definitely have a lot of different types of writers in the community, the Right Now community, and every single day is a different type of streaming experience. So it's really cool to have you, whether we're doing like story critiques or podcasts. For those of you, for tomorrow, I'm going to shout it again at the end of the stream, but tomorrow's podcast is I'm inviting an author, and we're going to be chatting about how to write with a disability. So it's going to be a really interesting dynamic discussion. It's going to be really cool. So always something going on, Mast. Absolutely. Okay, so let's hop into Soul's piece, From Beast to Human. Excerpt from chapter 10. On deck, as you learn, this area was called. You devour the meat in a few rapid bites, then pause only to clean your whiskers. That done, you make your way to where you know Shanks sleeps. Nosing your way past the door, you find him laying down, facing the ceiling. A bottle of something especially potent is gripped in his hand. He waves his other hand. No, in the mood to talk, he says. When there's no answer, he sits up and spots you. Oh, yes, no. You pause in the doorway. You've seen him act strangely after drinking, but usually he's happy, laughing, singing, sometimes just passing out. You recall him being sad a few times, but this is different. You just saw him not long ago. How was he like this already? Sniffing. You wonder if it's the strong drink in his hands. Maybe the harsher it smells, the quicker it makes him like this. He frowns. What's wrong? You raise one paw hesitantly, then slowly pat over to him. Laying your head on his bed, you look up at him. His fingers lace through your fur and tip your head up until your gaze meets his. Crocus doesn't know what he's talking about. He sighs. His breath reeks of the drink. There's no chance you're really. Yes, no. You blink, right? You give a low whine, then leap up next to him. You curl around until he's leaning against your side. He tips his head back. I know you're smart. Hell, the entire crew knows it. But for you to be really a human is crazy. You huff in agreement and lick his arm. He gives a small smile and nudges your muzzle away. Come on. No, that tickles. The smile fades as he takes another drink. Old man's just crazy. You nose along his arm until he wraps it over your neck. The bottle slips onto the bed. It's nearly empty, you notice. Shanks rolls onto his side. Crocus knows a lot. But how could he know about this? His face presses into your ruff, and you let out a rough growl. He blinks at you and frowns. What? You nudge his face, growling again. Something whispers at the back of your head. For some reason, you know how to get him out of this mood. You aren't sure how you know it, but you know. He sits up and watches you, curiosity and confusion flitting across his already hazy expression. An image flashes through your mind. Two kids playing, one with red hair. Confusion mingles with instinct as you nudge him up. What are you doing? He asks, weaving as he stands. You snort and crouch down in a playful stance. You pin your ears back for a second, then shove them forward. He blinks. As no, there is a hint of alarm in his voice. The image flashes through your head again. You swipe. Paw towards his leg. He stumbles back. You quickly swipe at the other leg. He jerks back, barely keeping his balance. Circling him, never standing still longer than a second, your paws flash out and keep nudging, tapping, moving him. You're careful to keep your claws sheathed. He stumbles back and forth, laughing softly as he tries to keep up with you. Come on. What are you doing? His eyes narrow and he grabs for you. Bursting out a quick purr, you dodge easily, nudging his side with your nose. You huff in amusement and he lunges for you. The chair gets knocked over as he does. Come here. Your name, he says, grinning. You paw him again, nudge his arm, step away from his hands. He's laughing, but then he's moving more surely after a few moments. You tap his outstretched hand at one point, and he flings himself across your back. You instinctively go limp. He lets out a loud oof as your belly hits the floor. His head drops. He's stunned briefly. Wiggling out from underneath him, you give a light hiss of challenge as you leap on his bed. There's not a lot of room in here. You can only leap so far away, but you don't know if you can make it outside, so you make do. He clumsily gets to his feet after a second and frowns at you. Something flickers in his gaze. What? You hiss again, a low, playful sound punctuated by a huff. He grins widely and spaces his feet before leaping for you. You duck, grabbing his pant leg in your teeth and jerking him back before he collides with the wall. When you let go, he spins around, still a little too clumsy, but better than when you walked in, and makes a grab at you. The grip is weak, and you easily squirm free. He gets another swat in as you get around him, but this time he stays facing you as he does. Finally, he drops on the bed. If I didn't know any better, I'd think you're sparring with me. You growl at that, but twitch your whiskers. He looks at you in alarm, but it fades as he gazes at you. You are, aren't you? You let out a slow, light hiss, then stand up straight. He sits down and motions you over. When you approach, he grabs your ruff with both hands. Thanks, you. He rests his forehead on yours for a second. My friend used to do that too. Crocus is crazy. I don't think you're her, but maybe he's right about you being a Zoan. You whine and flatten your ears. Shanks laughs softly. Don't worry. I know it's a lot to think about, but if he's right, then we can help. And if you aren't, well, it doesn't matter. You nudge his hands and rear up, placing your paws on his chest. He falls back with a groan. Don't do that, you. You know that hurts. He freezes. You let him up, cocking your head. You've never done that before, have you? You recall grabbing the mint from Hongo and once to grab a meaty bone from Rue, but never to Shanks. Shanks sits up with a sigh, rubbing his face. Ah, sorry. Just come on. Let's go back outside. When you give a curious meal, he stands and pats your head a couple times. I'll be fine. He walks out before you can react. You watch the closed door for several minutes. Getting him to play or spar, as he called it, was instinctual. It did seem to have helped him. But what did he mean by, that hurts? Shaking out your fur, you nudge open the door and race out after him. Woo! Wonderful. That was a great look into a second view story. So first off, that was really well done. I think this is the first second point of view that we've had before. I'm not as familiar with second point of view. I'm so used to my third point of view, my third perspective. And there's a little bit where I thought it was a first point of view, but very, very great job, my friend. Woo! So that was definitely really awesome. I think I definitely picked up on a lot of the references for the most part. I know this section really focuses on Shanks and the main character. I think what you do a good job on, and this is what fan fiction relies on, is you do a lot of references, but your protagonist still focuses heavily on their own character development. And I think that's what you do a great job on. This almost feels like somebody who doesn't know the One Piece universe can read this chapter and still know what's going on to a certain extent. And that's a hard thing to do when making references to a world if somebody hasn't seen One Piece, for example. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what's interesting is because you were saying this is my first story and second point of view. I'm not actually as familiar with second point of view. I know first, I actually just want to get a definition real quick. So I'm just going to pull this up. What is second POV? Let's see. If you're a fiction writer, what is narrative? First, I, you, third is she or he. We're always used to writing in the third. Second is you. Yep. So that's what I thought. Second point of view. If you're looking for the best article on point of view, you found it. Second, with second person point of view, the writer addresses the reader using the pronoun you, forces the reader into the story, making them part of the action and complicit in the events. This is hard to sustain over longer pieces of writing. It's one reason it is rarely used in narrative texts, but this is a very, very popular way of writing in game storytelling. In a point of view, choose your adventure type storytelling is one of my favorite gaming formats from when I was younger. That's when they use second POV a lot, especially if they want you to feel like you're part of the story and you're the decision maker. So really great job. So it's second POV isn't something that I've embarked on before, but it's really intriguing. I felt like by the end of the story, I was really pulled into it. I'm like, okay, I kind of feel like I'm like this beast now. And I thought that was actually really cool. You did a good job with the character development. So you did a good job with Shanks for just a bare bones level of him being a very playful drunk, which that's essentially Shanks. Shanks is a playful drunk. And upbeat. And we didn't really get too much intensity, which the point of this isn't there's no intense moments, but I think from a character development, it was fun. It was very fun. Yeah, Mass Toaster, completely agree. I loved choose your adventure books. I'll do quick I was words. I think quick aside. I was I literally one of my early books that I read when I was younger were choose your own adventure books. I absolutely loved that format. Okay. So let's dig into this. Now, the reason I actually didn't end up highlighting too much because a lot of what you wrote worked. I didn't there's not actually too many problems with this piece because the character development is fine. The world building is kind of pre-existing. I think there's probably some parts to cut down on the wordiness a little bit, I went back over what you sent me. The reader is a human. Yep, yep. I wanted to just make sure I didn't miss anything. So one of the side notes you had told me was basically the reader is a human who ate the cat fruit named Lynx, but awakened and failed. She's been stuck as a lynx for almost 8 years now and has no human memories left. So she gets glimpses into some of these memories, but she doesn't really realize what it is that she's seeing. Okay. Um, perfect. So let's the action in the present moment works. You can just tell they're kind of like playfully like fighting with each other, which is fun. I mhm. I would cut this person out. There's no chance you're really because that's like the name. So YN is always replacing whatever the name is. So I just started saying you. There's no chance you're really Jared. Yeah, I would just edit that quote or that dialogue. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, I would say you could probably end that on Crocus doesn't know what he's talking about, he says. Give a low wine. He tips his head back and now you're smart. Gotcha. Okay, so I was trying to understand what the intention was of the main character of our protagonist. I wasn't clear on what the protagonist wanted, at least just in this specific chapter. And you know deep down that you can get him out of this mood. You aren't sure how you know, but you know that's good. Um, I think the one thing that wasn't clear is why do you want to get him out of this mood? Because right now, like, is it because he's drinking? I mean, right now it just kind of seems like he's just like mumbling. Maybe like kind of he's like maybe like talking about things. And of course, this could be it because this is an excerpt, it could be a plot focused that we don't know the intention. Yeah, out of context, this is confusing. Yeah, okay. So the protagonist's reasoning is based on context, which is probably in a previous excerpt. Cool. Good to know. Then what I would do, so is then just reiterating whatever the protagonist's motive is, I would just reference it again here. That's what I would say. Even because this is chapter 10, I would still reference the protagonist's motive, maybe even at the beginning, closer to the beginning of the chapter. Because you know that the protagonist wants to talk about something or the protagonist wants something. That's fine. I would make Shanks even a little drunker. I would make his dialogue even sloppier because that's kind of like the thing that I picked on of basically the protagonist that feels like that he wants to have a meaningful conversation. I mean, obviously he can't talk, but he wants to have a meaningful moment with Shanks, but Shanks is too much of a alcoholic in this moment to really do anything meaningful. So it kind of feels like the protagonist wants Shanks to stop drinking. Okay. Crocus mentioned something just before this that would explain why he's upset drinking. Back sent the MC. Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Okay. That makes way more sense. Just that would explain why he's upset drinking. Then what I would do, Soul, is I would just make Shanks more upset because right now he's like, it doesn't right now, just based on his dialogue, it doesn't really feel like he's too upset. I would maybe give him like an action of like maybe he like flings the bottle, maybe he means to fling it on the bed and it shatters against the wall. I think doing something like that would just make it clearer of how upset he is, because I don't think his level of upset drinking was clear. You could tell he was down, but it just wasn't. I would just elevate that stake a little bit more. Maybe the like, or even the tiger, the main character comes into the room and ducks under a bottle that that crashes against the wall. Or the main character walks into the room and the room is filled with 15 empty alcohol bottles. There's another way to go about it, right? I think you just have to make it clear that he's upset in this present moment beyond being told that he's upset from the previous section. That'd be my suggestion. But I love their banter. I love the back and forth between them. I think that was really fun. I like when you do things like this. For some reason, you know how to get him out of this mood. You aren't sure how you know, but you know. And then Mass Toaster, you asked, is the MC a cat? So I do not watch One Piece. Yes. So let's see. So the reader is a human. So the main character is actually a human who ate a cat fruit model called Lynx, but essentially it sounds like it turned them into a cat. But then when they awakened in a full animal form and have lost kind of the zone. And basically they've kind of lost their human side over time. And now they don't really remember their humanity anymore. So that's what it is. They're basically a human stuck as a cat who really no longer remembers their humanity. They feel it in moments, but they don't remember. I think with this moment, when you have the character start swiping at him, I think what you should do is make it more intentional. Um, Obviously the main character tried to go in and like be near him, and that didn't work, right? And clearly he's still being upset. So I think you have to make it clear when the main character instead swipes like a bottle or has to do something that's a little more intentional, that they're trying something different. So that would be the way that I'd recommend. Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for stopping by, Saul. Appreciate you, my man. Thanks for stopping by. We'll be back tomorrow with the Create Right Now podcast. Let's see. Images. Yeah, so I think I would just make the starting moment clear of why the cat or how the cat is basically changing tactics to try to stop him. I would make this first moment a little clearer by him maybe swiping a bottle away. But the action is very well done. So the your description of their action between this back and forth, all the actions totally reminded me of One Piece. It reminded me of that style of the action sequences. So that was really well done. Really, really great work on that. I felt like it was clear, like I knew the type of vibe that was going back between the main character swiping at him. He tries to grab it. It's like this whole like, but it doesn't feel intense. It just feels like a lighthearted tumble for the most part. And I think it was fun. This is just such a fun moment. Yeah, and I don't actually think I have it too many recommendations because the fight itself works very well, and you've interweaved enough dialogue, enough description, and I know what's going on. And then anybody who's watched One Piece will get all the name references. I only recognized a couple of the references, but it's because I haven't gotten as far into One Piece. I'm not caught up on it. Oh, the one other thing I just didn't understand was why is a character confused by, but what did he mean by that hurts? Here, it was clear that you nudge his hands and rear up, placing your paws on his chest. I mean, it hurts because the paws are on his chest. I think that's pretty evident why he knows it hurts. So I'm not sure why the main character is confused by that. So I think I would just clarify this soul, make it a little clearer why the character is confused by that. It makes me think that it's probably doing some type of foreshadowing element, but I would just make that clear. Yeah, but other than that, so really great work. Really, really great fan fiction. I felt like even for a lot of our audience who probably hasn't seen One Piece before, they could get like a good sense of it. So really great action scene. I had a great time reading it. Shanks is a fun character, but I know I'm also not far enough in One Piece to know a lot of Shanks' backstory. Shanks' backstory hasn't really been explored too much up to where I got to. So I'm sure I'll get back to it. I end up going back to anime shows every once in a while when I'm in the mood. Binging One Piece is how I learned to write scenes, and this is the great thing about fan fiction. Fan fiction allows us to grow as writers because we get to write in a world with that already has the rules, and it allows us to practice and focus on one thing. So we don't have to worry about building out all the different elements of characters, world, dialogue, actions, and all the different things. We get to just focus on the one thing and practice it. And that's why fan fiction is great for both brand new writers and experienced writers. Absolutely. And I think even outside of the fan fiction, so it was really interesting reading a second person POV. I actually had a lot of fun with that. And now it's kind of putting me in the mood to want to do a choose your adventure. Oh my God. How much fun would that be if we did a choose your adventure stream? That'd be so much. I wonder if people would be down for that or not. I'm sure there has to be a format. There has to be people doing it already. I would so be I would love that. I don't know whether or not the community would have fun with that, but we did like a choose your adventure stream and we went through one of those choose your adventure books together. What an interesting. Hmm. Ideas. So thank you. I think choose your adventure. I would love that. My games are based on that format. That would definitely speak to the writer in me. That might be something that we could play around with. The idea literally just came to me, and like choose your adventures is definitely one of my old school favorite types of story game writing. Second person is such an interesting way of writing. It's really effective at establishing familiarity with the reader if done well. Utilizes how we think and implies we agree by speaking for the reader. Yep, completely agree, Eli. Absolutely. And so you did a good job of using that format, which we don't get to see often. So hopefully we'll get to see more first and second POV stories in the future. I obviously stick to the third POV, which is also what's the most popular. But yeah, hopefully more in the future. Awesome. And with that, I'm gonna wrap up the critique portion for right now because I can feel my voice starting to waver. We've definitely gotten a lot of great work done today. What I'm actually gonna do next, so don't forget, we still have the comment of the day game, so keep your comments coming. I picked out a couple ones. There's actually been some really helpful comments. I feel like today's winner is probably going to be one that's been helpful, but keep the comments coming. What we're going to do right now, I'm going to hop into a writing sprint. I'm actually about to write I'm about to write a major scene, not a scene. I'm about to write the next major reveal of my story because I was like getting to the end of it yesterday, but I want to finish it off. So we're not going to go super long. I'm just going to do a 20-minute writing sprint. Feel free to come join along if you want to get some brainstorming, writing, or editing done, or you could read along because I'm at a really interesting scene right now. I'm really, really interesting. And then after the writing sprint, I'll announce the winner of the comment of the day game. So stay tuned. Let's get the writing sprint on the books. But I have to pull up my story. So let me pull up Last Scarecrow. We'll throw up the music and we'll do super easy. Very, very simple writing sprint today. All right, perfect. So I got Last Scarecrow. All right. Where were we? Okay, so I have a really interesting moment that's going on with Last Scarecrow. We're in one of the final memories of the first demon, and we're viewing the past again. We're seeing the trenchcoat creator, the last robot, and the trenchcoat creator's young boy, as they basically came into this cavern, and they basically came into this like elemental type cavern where the elements are very apparent. Raining, I want to say it's raining from the ceiling, an open air ceiling. It's snowing from the ground up, electricity around the sides of the room. There's a giant crater, and the entire crater is kind of like fire ember based. The trench coat and the last robot go to the center of the crater. They pull out a wooden cube and they start this kind of ritual that this cube's kind of growing larger as it's basically gathering all these different elements, and it's taking the shape of a staff that I've referenced earlier in the story. So really interesting, really, really fun that I'm working on right now. And we're about to see something crazy happen because a barrier formed that with the creator and the robot in the center of it, and the boy is trapped on the outside of the aura because he was being a nuisance and basically was told to wait near the entrance. Okay. So I got 20 minutes on the clock. I'm going to start. Okay, so we're starting here. That's right at the end of this ritual. If you want to read along, some interesting, fun stuff going on right now. Let me know what you think of this moment if you're going to read along with me, because this is a crazy moment that I'm about to write. All right, I got 20 minutes on the clock, and it's time to write now. Yes. Whew. All right. Wonderful. I had to finish off that little chapter. Wonderful. All right. I was like, I knew I had to finish off that chapter. Oh my goodness. Man. Wow. I got some great work done in that one. That actually brings me to I was like, I know that I was going at the ending of that little chapter for a moment, but like I knew I had to like get to the end of that. You know, when you're like at the end of a section and you're like, all right, I need to get to the next chapter. So this actually brings me to chapter 51. Oh man, what a great reveal. What a great reveal. So much fun. Oh man. Clearly that was a pretty incredible moment. We finally got to see for the first time the antagonist, the demon's origin story, and it making a little more sense where the demon came from. That the demon was originally a young boy who was turned into the first demon. Oof, and we've gotten a lot of references throughout. So I got some really great work on my story. Definitely let me know whether you were whether you got some great work on your stories and or your thoughts. That was a little fun section to write. Now, as I look towards the end of the stream and I look towards the comment of the day game, my top picks. So I'm going to go hop over to the comments. All right. So I would say there wasn't too many crazy comments. I would say that I would probably say there was a top 3. Yeah, I would say there's definitely a top 3 for our comment of the day game. I would say okay. So I would say coming in 3rd place would all right. So we got 3 coming in 3rd place. I would say Penelope. Speaking as a former historian, the title is too short by 3 to 4 sentences. That definitely made me laugh a little bit. That was a great comment. So 3rd place, Penelope. Speaking as a former historian, the title is too short by 3 to 4 sentences. Absolutely loved it. Coming in 2nd place for our comment of the day game, Soul had an absolutely great comment. People who hate like that are unhappy with themselves, have no clue how to deal with it, especially in a healthy way. Completely agree, my friend. Very great way to add to the conversation. People who hate like that are unhappy with themselves and have no clue how to deal with it, especially in a healthy way. Great comment. That's comment number 2. And then the top winner of today's game goes to, well, we had a number of great comments. It goes to, who cares what Eli thinks? Second person is such an interesting way of writing. It's really effective at establishing familiarity with the reader if done well. It utilizes how we think and implies we agree by speaking for the reader. Completely agree. That is a great way to frame second person narration. Really great job. I think today's the winning comment definitely goes for most beneficial and supportive, as we've seen from our top comments today. So really great job, my friends. Great to have you guys here. And it's been quite a stream today. We had a really great experience. Woo, ML, you made it back. I know we're hitting on our 3 hours for today. We definitely got a lot done. So really great work, really fun stream. Now, as we look towards Yeah, you should absolutely feel free to send an excerpt sometimes. I know sometimes there's a lot of nerve having it over with a live audience. I totally understand that. I'm sure I'll start at some point a closed critique thing at some point in the future when I have the bandwidth to. That's not on the live version. But you absolutely should. It's a fun piece. I would highly recommend it. And you just have to be clear with what your expectations are and knowing that people might give good feedback or bad feedback, but it's all in the goal of wanting to improve your storytelling. Perfect. And now, as we're looking towards creative writing on the morrow, so make sure you check back in tomorrow for the Create Right Now podcast on writing a book with a disability with author AJ Glasser. So I have the little thumbnail here. Perfect. This was just the thumbnail for it. So tomorrow's Create Right Now podcast will be writing a book with a disability with author AJ Glasser. So definitely come join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific, 1, 2, 3, 4 p.m. Eastern. I was like, I probably should have had it saved. Let's see. I'll pull up the invite link. Perfect. Here we go. So I'll drop the invite link down in the comments if you want to go show up and go be reminded for tomorrow's Create Right Now podcast. I just dropped the link in the comments. So definitely come back and join us tomorrow. It will be an absolutely great chat. AJ has a very unique strategy with having a learning disability like dyslexia and still being like she's a published author, being able to write stories and overcoming that type of disability is incredible. She has a unique method, and we're going to be sitting down and chatting with her tomorrow. It will be a great experience. If you're looking for something to watch next, definitely go check out in the YouTube description below is the Reading Sprints for Storytellers. It's our playlist from some of our previous story and critique episodes. Definitely worth checking out if you've missed previous episodes and you're like, hey, I want something else to watch. We've had some great stories from the community. Every week is different stories, and it's all listed in the description, so you can jump to whichever stories sound interesting. And don't forget, like the stream on the way out. Let me know that you got value out of this. Help us show the algorithms that writing streams are cool. Appreciate you, my friends. And that is all that I got for it today. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers.